Alrighty, everyone, and welcome to tonight's show. We are going to do a update on a couple court hearings that have been occurring here in Australia, and very happy to welcome back Pastor Paul Burton. I'll just bring him on now. How you going?
Julia, very good, thank you, Julia, and yourself?
Yeah, really good.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's just really good to actually meet you in person this time.
Yeah, it's lovely. There was a whole bunch of people there on Wednesday in Brisbane that I hadn't met before, so it was really lovely to actually meet. Anne GREER, the grandmother in Russell's case, I've been helping for about three and a half years. I've never met in person, Julia. So,
There you go.
yeah, and a bunch of other people too. Yeah, there was another guy from the Genesis 2 Church, a pastor, Charles Barton, that we've been helping in the Court of Equity with a whole other matter, was there, and two beautiful former policemen from the Australia Project,
That's right.
Kent and Lance Brown, heaps of really great people. So it was a fantastic vibe.
It really was. Wasn't really sure what to expect, but I think the overall, I guess the vibe of the day, that there was a lot of support there. And I know that there was a lot of support as well, with all the people that I've been speaking to about it as well. So, and I think that's really what really made one of the biggest differences, because I was actually speaking to Anne GREER afterwards, and she said that the judge and the lawyers that were representing the Queen, they were actually very nice and very well behaved, which is very unheard of. So,
and shaking too. I know the barrister was quivering while he was sitting next to Cole Dunk in the gallery. I was sitting from behind, but he's really concerned because the eyes of the public are upon them.
That's it.
I think it's a really important thing, and it's a good reminder to everybody that it's important. Democracy, it appears to be something we have to fight for, Julia, and over the time with all the COVID stuff that's been going on, the COVID pantomime, as I call it, they've shut a lot of people out of the judicial system, and a lot of these courts are doing what they want. And I think bringing the public back in like that, and that show of support, lets those places know that the people are not happy about what's happening. So it's
we packed out the courtroom too, which was
standing room only. So it was great. The gallery is not huge, but 50 people or something, but enough to fill the gallery and have standing room only. I thought was really, really good. A good outcome.
Yeah. So let's talk about the outcome, or I guess where we're at with this, because it was adjourned, and that did actually work in our favour. So maybe just explain to the viewers on how that's.
Yeah, in my view, it did. It's a bit of an awkward one because it was almost like the prosecution, for people to understand, the prosecution had evidence they were relying on for this hearing, and they didn't serve either Russell or Patrick until the last minute, which already kind of gave them grounds for an adjournment. Because if you just dump a heap, 300-400 pages of paperwork on the people the night before they appear in court, you always have a strong argument, self-represented especially, to say, well, I haven't even had a chance to look at what they've got against me, So even though this thing had been set in stone for 3 months, and one of the previous judges, Judge Smith, said to, rather rudely said to Patrick O'Day, the last time I was in court with them, I said to Patrick O'Day, if you don't appear on the 8th of February, I'll issue a warrant for your arrest, and then you get there with all the people and it gets adjourned. It's just ridiculous. But the reason it works in our favour, for people who don't know, this original matter, which was, it was basically a bunch of people, as you're kind of aware now, that were accused of being part of an international child trafficking syndicate. And I think it was 8 people in total, Patrick, Russell, and 3 of those 8. Now, this has been not going on for 4.5 years, but what happened about 3 or 4 months ago is, because the unrepresented individuals, with my and Graham Bell's support, primarily Graham Bell and my support and some others, they decided to separate the trials into 2 trials, because the represented individuals are kind of plea bargaining or doing their deals between each other, as they quite often do in the judicial system. And it was taking so long that they want their trial to be heard so they can get this done, whereas the unrepresented people are fighting tooth and nail to challenge on every single way they can. So they broke it into 2 trials. And this is really bizarre. And the reason they did is because, and this is before you came on the Wednesday, so a lot of people won't know this, they broke it into 2 trials because the represented people, which obviously have representation because they're represented people, but they were saying, the unrepresented are holding us up. We want to go to trial because our legal people are all talking with each other. They're working out who's going to make admissions to what, and they're going to tick all their boxes. So we don't want to wait on any longer. So we're going to set 2 trials, and we'll move the represented people into one trial and the unrepresented into another.
And the
Then,
represented being Dr. Russell PRIDGEON?
no.
Oh.
Actually, all the unrepresented actually were Russell PRIDGEON. Russell was represented on this day, but that wasn't originally in the brief. That wasn't in our thing. Russell was unrepresented last time. That's been recent. So Anne, Patrick, and Russell are all unrepresented. So they're the unrepresented group, but the represented group got set down and they were going to set a date for hearing. Then one legal aid lawyer for one of the represented people said, "Hey, hang on a minute." He said, "If the represented people go to trial first and they're convicted, and then the unrepresented people later on get off, that's not fair." So he then tried to argue that maybe the represented people should wait until after the unrepresented people are heard before they have their hearing, which is exactly the opposite of why they split them apart. So it's ridiculous. So and that the represented people's hearing is set down for a 4-week trial, I believe, a 4-week trial in May of this year. So now what's happened with this matter is because with Russell, Patrick, and Anne, it's been adjourned. There's no way, because their trial, they believe with Russell, Patrick, and Anne, it could be at least 12 to 16 weeks. According to Anne and Patrick and Russell, they're going to tender every piece of evidence in the brief, and they've got an 80-gigabyte brief. So we're estimating a trial of 1 to 2 years.
Wow.
That's the position, because they put together a massive brief that's just got loads of rubbish in. It's got nothing to do with these people. It's just padding and this huge software brief. They still haven't got a proper copy of their own brief of evidence. That's how corrupt this is. So so the adjournment's not a bad thing, and it shows clearly, in my view, that the prosecution is really distressed because they don't know what to do. They would have barreled forward on the 8th if they could have. But they accepted the adjournment. There was a bit of kerfuffling around in there that you saw. I can't remember the judge's name now. I
was going to ask, what was the judge's name?
I don't know. I had a name I was calling her, but I won't repeat it here in case she sees this video.
Well, she wasn't keen on you helping Patrick
Lowry.
at all.
No, but that's the same as before. That Judge Lowry. They never are, because they want these people at a disadvantage, and they don't allow anyone else to represent. If you're not a lawyer, you're not allowed to even speak to the court. What she did in there, a lot of people won't realise, but she actually said, while I was sitting next to Patrick, quite rudely, "I don't even know who this person is sitting there at the bar, because I'm not supposed to be sitting at the bar in her view, but I'm a support person for Patrick, so I have a right to be there." So,
that's right.
So she's kind of saying, I don't know who that person is. Now, last time I was in court, the judge said that to me. I answered him. And I said, I'm Pastor Paul and I'm a support person for Patrick. And he just went me, because I'm not allowed to address the court because I'm not a representative. So this time I just kept my mouth shut and said nothing and just moved back a little bit behind them. So there was nothing she could do, But the reason for that is, I believe, Julie, is because I'm quite confident in there. I've been at the bar many times representing myself, so I can go and sit at the bar and I feel quite comfortable. And it's quite an intimidating environment in the courts. A lot of people are asking, like, can we go in? People are so fearful that they don't.
I was.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know. I was. Well, that was my first time being in a courtroom, and very intimidating. And it really shows me personally that it takes a lot of, you've really got to step up and sort of fight for your own rights. And just seeing Patrick and Anne standing there and speaking to the judge amongst of everything that's happened is incredibly courageous and brave. And I commend them highly, as well as Dr. Russ Bridgen and the others, which I didn't meet. But that takes, a lot of courage. And I know that you've been also, throughout your time, developing your skills as well, appearing in court for a while now. So
5.5 years fighting against these people and running my own cases and arguing in the courts. That's why I now have so many skills, because I've had to learn them as an absolute necessity. I had no choice. The important thing, Julie, for me and for the public, is that the public have every right to go into a court. We have an open justice system. We're a democracy. So those courts are just as available to you or anyone else. You can go into any courtroom at any time and go and sit in the gallery. There's no law that says you can't. So the intimidation is really just to stop people going in there. But the reality is people should be in there, because while you're not in there, they're getting away with a lot of things that they otherwise wouldn't.
That's
Because
right.
when the public's viewing what's going on, it's a lot more difficult for them. Like it is, because it's confronting. If you're not being honest and forthright, and there's a whole bunch of people witnessing you, it gets more difficult.
Yeah.
And if you're self-representing, and you've got a bunch of people behind you that are supporting you, it's more empowering.
Yep.
It's such a simple thing and very, very powerful. So I thought the turnout was great. It was fantastic. I think Anne was a lot stronger as a result. Patrick is struggling, but Patrick's highly PTSD. I mean, this man's been through the Rhodesian War. He survived driving over 4 landmines. I mean, his hearing's horribly impaired. His legs are fused together, so he can hardly walk. They won't even really allow him a support person. I mean, it's disgraceful. And here's a judicial system that's supposed to be impartial, fair, natural justice, due process, procedural fairness. You have a right to have a support person, blah, blah, blah. Mainly lip service, Julie. Because when you're in there, they do everything they can to disempower people and to make it as difficult as possible.
That's right.
So
Well,
it's been adjourned for a month, I believe, until March the 15th, and it's set for mention, which means that day on February the 8th was a hearing. The reason we asked for quite a lot of people to attend is a hearing would have gone for the whole day, and they would have witnessed the entire process of them arguing their case, which is why we wanted the people there. This next one on March the 15th is a mention, and at the moment Anne and Russell too, most probably Patrick as well, will all be appearing just on phone only, because a mention is to set down the date. So what I'll be encouraging people to do is that the mention, in my view, they can't, Anne was a bit worried, but they can't just change a mention to a hearing.
Okay.
Because they're only, if they're only on phone, they can't change it to a hearing just suddenly, because they do have to, as arguably corrupt as it is, in my view it is, they still can't, there's certain things they can't do, because they're appeal grounds, and they can't just change a mention to a hearing to deprive people of their rights to be heard. So March the 15th will set down another date for this matter. And in that time, I believe Patrick in the last couple of days has put in an application to have the matter withdrawn on some really strong legal arguments. They've broken every rule in the book with this. I mean, we know this is about the abuse of children, and we know there's a bunch of parents, grandparents, and a couple of beautiful, men fighting to protect children that are clearly disclosed sexual abuse and criminalising those people. And meanwhile, the people that are actually the perpetrators of that abuse, those children have been returned back to. I mean, it's disgraceful. It's absolutely appalling. And I don't believe as a society in this country, with what we know and understand, how we can allow these kind of things to continue. These are children. Right? It's bad enough for how they've been persecuted and absolutely decimated trying to fight for the rights of these children. They've just been up there. They should be heroes.
They are. They are. And that's why, like yourself, myself, just constantly telling everyone about it, because it's not getting the media is not really telling the truth. And so we've got to do our bit and share the truth with anyone that we can. So
that's the thing.
Yeah. So we can still support them by sharing the truth, but also I know that Dr. Russell Pridgeon has a donation tab.
Yeah, it's a fundraiser. I had it kind of finishing on the 8th. I'll extend that now for a bit longer, because we raised about, I think, $3,092, and there's a couple of extra donations coming on the day, so not a lot. And the council he engaged last minute, which is still a bit up in the air. A solicitor came, but the barrister, we're not sure if the barrister's going to run the case. To be honest, Julie, I think a lot of barristers, they don't want to challenge the court and the government, because it threatens their jobs and position and their allegiances to the bar. That's why they don't want people like me in there talking on behalf of others, right?
Well, Serene Tefaha, she lost her license because of this case.
Yeah, primarily this case supporting Anne
Yeah.
Greer. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Magistrate Gett that reported her, that really was instrumental in her getting struck off. Now, a lot of people thought it was other stuff to do in Melbourne and her speaking out more. That may have had a role to play in it. I'm not entirely sure, but I can assure you Magistrate Gett had a big role in it. And all she did was to openly disclose the abuse of one of the her client's children. She was actually representing Anne at the time, but the grandchild. And she just openly just disclosed, just said that, this is what it was about. And she didn't hold back. She's quite fearless. And they didn't like it because they don't want them raising that. They're doing everything they can to hide the abuse of the children because it's their defense.
And
It's
it's a multi-billion-dollar industry as well.
Well, it is with state condoned, with them being removed by the state. It is with the family courts. It's a little different because they're moving children from like sometimes one parent to another and between them. Right. So a different kind of play is going there. But this is definitely very, very corrupt and appalling. And as to why they support perpetrators of abuse of children and why the court on so many occasions gives children to the perpetrators of abuse leads us to ask some very, very, very important questions about what's going on here and why. Why would they do that? Why would they take children of victims or people protecting children that have disclosed sexual abuse and give them to the perpetrators? I mean, you have to ask yourself some very serious questions about why would they do that.
Sounds like a criminal syndicate to me.
Yeah.
After everything that I've been listening to the work that you've done, and especially with our last interview that we did, so it's very disturbing, and we've got to keep pushing forward. So I'm looking forward to, I guess, being notified about the next date that we can sort of start supporting as well. So I'm sure you'll keep me informed and we'll hear about it.
I will. And for those of people that don't know, I think subscribing to my mailing list is most probably the best way because obviously it's very difficult for me to call up everyone in person. I do my best. But, once you start getting to hundreds of people, it's like, you didn't tell me. It's like, well, please, I'm a bit swamped here. So paulrobertburton.com, there's also the New Templars.faith mailing list. I go out on both those, but I put out messages on those mailing lists, and that's much more a surefire way to know what's up to, keep you up to date with everything. I share the videos with you on those things as well. So, and anyone else I'm talking to. So people can keep up to date with these matters through just that mailing list. And I think that's better in a way than trusting good old Facebook because we all know the limitations there. And we certainly know that our implied freedoms are being severely limited and the media so largely controlled now. So the mailing list is most probably the best way to stay in touch with those cases. Really, and
I'll share that link for people just as well.
So just paulrobertburton.com, and there's a subscribe thing there. It comes up automatically, but I think on the contact page there's also a subscribe. We just drop in an email and hit enter, and then you'll get any emails or any updates. So I think that's helpful.
Fantastic. So let's talk about your case now. Why are you going to court?
Why am I going to court? Well, I've been going to court for 5 years because I had no choice, because I got criminally charged. I got charged for 10 charges, 4 charges against Section 105 of the Child Protection Act, I call it the alleged Child Protection Act. I don't think in this case it's about protecting children. I think it's about protecting the department and out-of-home care. And for breaching court, what they said, allegedly breaching court suppression orders. Now, remember, the court suppression orders I'm alleged to have breached were in a closed children's court. I didn't know about them. I was never shown them. And they've chosen to criminally charge Dr. Andrew Katelaris and I for basically saying the name of a child on Facebook along with 4 million other people, while they allowed Channel 7 to broadcast about this child and everyone else. I can't say the child's name, but you and everyone else still can, and they won't charge you. But
they've gone after you. They've gone after you, and
they've just picked me and Dr. Andrew specifically. Yes,
that's right. And were you guys working together at the time for a specific reason, or
not specifically? No, we come together because Andrew was actually helping the child because the child had quadriplegia, spastic cerebral palsy. Had very, very serious health conditions as a consequence of a vitamin K injection. He was born healthy, but he was a vitamin K injection in the Ladies Salento Hospital. Really messed him up, and possibly 2 hepatitis B shots. But he was suffering intractable epilepsy. Intractable epilepsy means that no allopathic medicine, no pharmaceutical medicine could stop his seizures. Right. So those parents, as a last resort, because the child was so highly compromised, high needs child, they were amazing parents. Even looking after that child was an incredible amount of work, 24/7. They were amazing parents. They found that through the use of medicinal cannabis, just a few drops of high CBD oil with a tiny little bit of THC in it, not enough to affect anyone, but a high CBD-based cannabis oil would stop his seizures when nothing else would. So those parents had to, through doing that, effectively had some quality of life back, and so did the child. He began to improve quite quickly. It was witnessed on social media by thousands of people, so much so that a mainstream television station ran a show about it. After it went into a closed children's court, strangely enough. They charged me later, but they allowed Channel 7 to do what they want. And the Australian newspaper kind of targeted me and called me an anti-medicine cult leader. And Andrew and I hardly knew each other. Andrew was assisting the family because the family had chosen of their own free will to treat the child with medicinal cannabis. It was working. Andrew is very skilled and has a great understanding of medicinal cannabis and has spent many years fighting for the legalisation of cannabis and hemp in this country. And he has a medical doctorate as well. He's not a registered doctor. He chose to give up his registration many years back, I think 2007, maybe around that time, because to still treat people with medicinal cannabis when the government was still banning it, because it's a very simple inert plant that grows in your back. You can grow in your back garden, and it has these amazing health benefits. And if people were to realise that, then we'd be able to help ourselves with our health and well-being with simple plant medicines, and we wouldn't need to pay top dollar and have these doctors and massive hospitals and all this other stuff.
So where is this child? Do you know now? Because
Queensland now, back in Queensland. He was removed from his parents forcibly and violently. There was a big altercation. I got pepper sprayed and assaulted in it. They came into a church complex originally. I was ministering for the family, so I was giving spiritual support. And Dr. Andrew was advising them on medicinal cannabis and diet guidelines for fundamental organic natural diets, because we found with really good diet can help a child with intractable epilepsy incredibly. So it wasn't just about cannabis; it was about a whole plant-based diet. Because we were in the videos when it was live cast, the event. A lot of people saw some shocking stuff occur. They saw me get pepper sprayed. They saw previously in the church before, they saw me with the child not knowing what to do, and just the general struggles we all went through. It went viral on social media. Millions of people saw it. And then a whole bunch of newspapers were reporting on it at the same time as well. I said Channel 7, all these other people reporting. So it was just massive. Everyone in the country knew it. They had to close the thing down. And they ripped the child. Basically, they removed him unlawfully. They lied about all the reasons for his removal. Everything about it was a lie. I won't go into the details here because that's next week. That's what I'm proving with the malicious prosecution. They lied about everything. We knew they were lying. We knew at the time they were lying. We know now that they were lying, and they're still lying. And I think most probably the biggest lesson in this is this was an Indigenous child, First Nation, Australian. I basically said that the stolen generation hadn't stopped. I made that quite public too. They don't like to hear that, but that's the truth. They're still ripping more Indigenous kids now than ever, and the net's getting wider. They rip children for profit. This department lies about everything nearly all the time. And in New South Wales, in my view, under Section 250 of the Child Protection Act, every single child's removed unlawfully because the secretary delegates authority to a senior caseworker that then gets the power to remove the child. But that senior caseworker wasn't even there. They never are. And then they sub-delegate their power to other caseworkers with minimal skills. And basically any caseworker in there is taking children with the police without any warrant, judicial oversight, without any real evidence. And in New South Wales, I believe every removal of every child, in my view, is unlawful. It's very, very rare for a child that really needs to be removed. I mean, there are a few cases where a child would be being abused, in a situation. But the police have the power to intervene. If it's a criminal matter, of course the police can run in if a child's been threatened or harmed. This is not what this is about. This is about removing children, particularly Indigenous children, and targeting children with disabilities because they're worth more money. And it's 100% privatised industry now in this country.
Can you just mention how much? It's like about $400,000 up to for a disability.
Yeah, according to the Productivity Commission, that's on my website, which is, government released information. They were saying children removed that were going into out-of-home care into residential care. The figures, like I think for a child that wasn't going into residential care, were somewhere between 100 to about 280,000 a year or 250,000 a year. Highly compromised children were from about 400 up to 880,000. That was in out-of-home care, high needs children. Wow. So children with disability, if you work out a very high needs child, somewhere between 500,000 to about 850,000 just for starters per year, going to a private organisation. That's why they remove the children this money. They're removing their financial units. That's what the department calls them. We've sunk so low as a society now that what may have originally been some kind of system that perhaps might have been set up to help children, I'm not entirely sure it was, to be honest. I have my own suspicions about that. I think it may have been created this way in the first place. That's the real elephant in the room.
You know? Well, all the evidence seems to point to that, because
I think it was JFK said, I think the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open and democratic society, and he goes on about it and how we should loathe secrecy. And what we're seeing here in this country, and others too, remember it's a global issue, is that all children's courts are closed courts, and they use suppression to shut people down like they have me. And whenever they're using those kind of suppressions like that and they're dragging people into closed children's courts, they become, maybe even not intentioned originally, but again, I'm not sure. I think maybe they are intended this way, but they become a breeding ground for corruption because the government and the people involved are all profiting from it. They're all getting paid very, very well, much better than a lot of the people in the public sector would be getting paid. They're all getting paid by the taxpayer's purse as well. They all have their livelihoods to protect, and it becomes greed, just pure greed. And in my view, they become like sociopaths, or in some cases psychopaths. They're completely disconnected. They've just got day jobs. They go to work. They do their thing. I'll just go and take some children off some parents. I don't care. They go home to their own families. Some of them. It's just like I don't know how you do that, but they do.
Yeah, it's sick. It's a real sickness. Maybe we can.
So next week, some malicious prosecutions against 2 senior public officers in their personal names, Michael Coutts-Trotter and Lloyd Babb.
Yeah, that's
it was a 3.5-3-year battle just to keep their names on the ticket. What
do you mean by that?
Well, the state government kind of jumped in when I took them to court in their personal names and said the state accepts vicarious liability, and they removed their name off it because the state will protect its people, just like the department protects caseworkers. I don't believe this law, the suppression laws, 105 that I'm challenging, I don't, but they say it's to protect the privacy and identity of a child, to protect a child from stigma. Right, but I believe it's actually to protect the privacy and identity of the department and to protect their malfeasance, because a lot of it is. It's not just misfeasance, it's malfeasance, and to hide the fact that they're ripping children for profit and that they make mistakes all the time and they're incompetent and they remove children as a first recourse, and the damage they do, in my view, is irreparable to families. Thousands and thousands of families are impacted. I think I mentioned to you before, but in, I think, the 20 to 21 year in this country, according again to the Productivity Commission, 295,000 children were the subject of some kind of intervention by the department. They weren't all removed, but it gives you an idea of the numbers. That's 5.1% of all children in this country. So if anyone out there goes, well, I'm not worried about this, they're not my kids. Well, one day it might well be. And the numbers are growing very quickly. And this is a complete targeted strategic breakdown and destruction of family units. It's a cultural breakdown. It's a form of genocide against the Indigenous and other minority groups. It's growing. They profit. The more disadvantaged the child is, the more money they're worth. So the whole financial mechanism is actually geared at making children sicker and removing them. And that's what happens.
As well as indoctrinating them, because I'm witnessing the attack and assault on children, their minds, particularly on all levels. Like, this is a little bit off topic, but I attended a drag time for story, whatever you call it, a few days ago before I met you. And I went in there, and what they're teaching their children, it's sickening, absolutely sickening. And they're using victim mentality and this confusion of gender, and it's quite disturbing how they're literally coming at them from all angles. Doesn't matter where you're from. If you're from I guess, anywhere in society, that there is an attack and an assault on children. And so it's really important that whoever's listening to this, that we start paying attention and pushing back. And I went in there and confronted them, and I got asked to leave straight away. They didn't like that. They don't like the confrontation. They don't like questions. And the same sort of thing like what you're doing, you know, anytime we have any sort of pushback in the community, we are faced with police and quite unhappy, indoctrinated parents. And
they'll intimidate anyone that steps up, basically. That's what they do, particularly with parents and people like that. When they step up and start talking about this stuff, they target them to suppress them. They have the power to remove their children, and they do, even though it's unlawful. You know, so those kind of threats are disgusting for people. I don't think there's anything as abhorrent, in my view, as parents that have had their children removed and given to sexual predators. I don't think there'd really be anything worse, in my view. I think that's far worse than getting incarcerated. I mean, getting locked up's one thing, especially if you're innocent, which a lot of people are. To have your children taken and know they're being abused, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't allow that to happen with my children or grandchildren, and none of our community is. And after what happened with this child and what I'm fighting for concerning this child with this malicious prosecution and my High Court challenge too, I mean, if that gets up, and I'm still hopeful it will, it's a high probability it will, I'll be in the High Court. You know, I've made application. It's very difficult to get in, but if that gets in, then we have ourselves a serious challenge here. And I think, again, that I'm just trying to fight for some semblance of democracy to maintain in a system which, as otherwise, I think most people have pretty much given up on. You know, I've always been of view. I didn't come to destroy or take down a system. That was never my position here. My position has always been a very spiritual one. My position is about protecting children, because that's what God commands me to do. And I think any decent parent or any adult, even if you're not a parent, it's a fundamental responsibility to protect our young. You know, if we don't protect our children, we don't, as a culture and as a society. I don't really personally think there's any point being a society if you just allow your children to get abused like this. So, yeah, we have to stand.
We do. I'd like to just highlight also can you just talk a little bit about Michael Coutts-Trotter, because I believe that you mentioned once that he was responsible for a lot of children's deaths, which was actually a case that was won.
No, it's
no?
not. I don't think not a case that was won. No, it's not a case that was won. What I stated is a statement released from their own information from the Department of Facts /DCJ, and that is, with their annual reports, there's around about 100 children a year die in their alleged care. You know, so when the department's involved with them, they have about 100 deaths for all different reasons whilst on their watch. And Mr. Coutts-Trotter was the secretary for about a 10-year period. You know, so the quick maths on that is about 1,000 deaths on his own watch. And those, you know, the 2021 reports up on my website. I got the 16-17 one. It was a little bit less. The numbers are going up, of course, per year. But I'm just saying they're the number of children that die. The problem for me more than that is this: here's a man with a minimalistic journalistic background, really not that highly skilled. He was convicted of a serious indictable offence many years ago. He was very young at the time. He was an adult, but very young, and he was convicted for trafficking heroin. Yet, despite that, he got moved into very, very high positions in the government, and a lot of people are not happy about that. You know, when he was the head of the Department of Education in New South Wales, it was such that he couldn't go into a school, and I knew school principals that wouldn't let him into schools because he had a criminal history, and they weren't allowed to, according to their own legislation. He wasn't allowed on the school grounds. So the head of the Department of Education wasn't allowed in because of his criminal history. It's ridiculous. So, you know, I don't know. I've never met the man personally. I don't know. It happened a long time ago. Maybe he's made amends. But what's really bugs me and gets up my coy is, having seen over 150 cases now in the children's courts, I've seen them make up rubbish and rip children off parents for cannabis, you know, because the parents smoke a bit of yarnie, as the black fellas call it. You know, somebody says, I smoke a bit of cannabis, they'll rip a kid, you know, for all kinds of rubbish. So it's like, here you've got a guy that is forgiven for trafficking heroin, yet his own department's ripping children off people for declaring they smoke a bit of pot. It's just ridiculous, you know. So it's him, and Lloyd Babb is the former director of public prosecutions, the DPP. They're commissioned in this state with the right to be fair and equanimous on behalf of the people and to run, I suppose, indictable offences.
Yeah.
A DPP, that jury trials and all that, their job as the Director of Public Prosecutions is to publicly prosecute on behalf of the government and the people. And what they've done to me is they've done everything they possibly can to not do anything properly. Like, so they accused me of releasing medical information. They said, you've released medical information in a closed children's court. And I said, well, what medical information? They said, we're not going to show you, it's secret. So I said, well, how can I argue what medical information I released if you're not going to tell me? We can't have it, you know. So I had to fight all the way to the Supreme Court. And they said, we're not going to give it to you. I said, what do you mean you're not going to give it to me? They've done this to me for like years, just fighting me hook, line and sinker, you know. And then it turns out that the medical information they got, I know why they didn't want to release it, because it shows that they lied about the removal of the child. That's the truth.
It's exposing them constantly
Yeah.
themselves. Sorry. Yeah.
And I've been targeted basically and suppressed as well for many, many years, basically for being a victim in a situation and merely speaking the truth, along with millions of other people that are upset. And they made an example of me because they use fear to intimidate people, and it works. A lot of people go, oh my God, I don't want to happen what's happened to Paul and Andrew, you know, and they all go running off and say, we'll keep our mouths shut, you know.
It happens all the time.
Yeah, that's how it works, you know. But it doesn't work with everybody. Some people are not like that. And in my view, I think we have to think of the children first and foremost. So with that in mind, I'm moving forward for a malicious prosecution from the 13th to the 17th, beginning next Monday in the Sydney District Court. I think it's courtroom 16C, which is level 16 in the John Maddison Tower building. That's behind the Downing Centre. Next street across, Goulburn Street, 86 to 90 Goulburn Street, from 10 a.m. on Monday. I'll expect there'll be some numbers there, a bit like Russell's case. This is different because this is not stopping, and it's running for 5 days. And the first day to 2 days, I'm going to be sitting in a witness box tendering all my evidence to show my case, because I'm going to argue my case. And then I think the next 2 days, I've got some witnesses in, and I've got 3 facts representatives who will be appearing, 2 on AVL and 1 in person. That I'm questioning in regards to what happened to me, whereby I'll be attempting to expose what they've actually done. And not so much just for me and my case, but the fact that they do this all the time to children and families everywhere. I'm one of the few people that's actually got this far and been able to mount a kind of an attack, if you like, a judicial attack of a kind, as a form of defence. But nonetheless, to challenge what they've done to me, and more importantly, what's happening to all these children.
That's right. And what it sounds like is that you're going to, as you're fighting forward and moving forward, you're also exposing them as well.
Well, if the media would write about it, that would be helpful. But it's important, you know. You need to shine a light in the darkness, and these things need to be known. And the judiciary has a responsibility as well. Let's remember that the judiciary was designed, you know, due to the separation of powers doctrine in a democratic society, to stand between the people and the government, and to be impartial, and to look at the information from both sides, and to make fair and just decisions. That's not how I've been treated. I've been treated like shit, right, by these people for 5.5 years, treated like absolute dog shit, you know, even worse than dog shit, you know. They've done everything. They haven't even followed their own statutory obligations. They've broken every rule in the book with me. And unfortunately, this happens to a lot of parents in closed children's courts, and you don't hear about it. What they've done to me is what they do to parents. I'm not a parent in this case. That's what's very interesting about it. But they've treated me with all the venom they did a parent. But I'm a pastor. You know, this was a bit of a curveball. You know? And Dr. Andrew was just helping them. And his thing was around medicinal cannabis, which is also a very hot topic too. You know, so you've got a number of things for this child. He's Indigenous, First Nation, huge issue, stolen generation, cultural genocide, still happening today, more so than ever. You've got the fact that he was damaged by Big Pharma, by hospitals, neglect. Another big one, Big Pharma doesn't get any bigger. Cannabis, stolen generation. And state condoned child abuse and child trafficking. You've got the whole caboodle in one case.
It's so intense. Like, I'm still processing a lot that I hear, and you know, just I'm in awe of your strength as well. And I know that it does probably there's a lot to carry, I think. And you know, I really just wish you all the best throughout the court hearing, and I'll be there to support you too.
Yeah.
So
A lot to carry is an understatement, trust me.
yeah.
It's a rather large bad cross to bear. I'm not sure why I was given this, but I have been creators given me this job. I have to complete the task righteously. I don't condone violence. I never have, even though a lot of people have accused me of it. That's not the case. I do, however, condone protecting your children and using all force that's reasonable, up to and including lethal force if necessary. Do not let them take your children. Absolutely. But I do not condone violence of any kind. You know, and that's where we've come to, Julie. That's the real. I'm calling you Julie, and it's Julia. That's what happens when I get a bit fried.
It's okay.
Trust me, I know who you are. So I do it. I don't know. It's so corrupt. I don't know. I mean, I hope to get an impartial, honest, and fair judge. It'd be nice. You know, in my history before many of them now, I think more than any other self-represented individual in this country, there's been a few that I do actually respect that I think have done all they could in a very difficult system to help me. But a lot of them just toe the government line. They're just they act like the judicial arm of the government department. You know? And that's not what's supposed to happen. They're supposed to. And so I again think our job as the public, as we the people, is to shine a light on the darkness and to hold them to account and to massage them, for want of a better word, into doing the job they're supposed to do. That's all I've asked. All I've ever asked for is justice. I haven't asked them to say I'm right. I've just said, hear me. I want to be heard. I don't see why can't I be heard? Why don't they allow me to be heard? Why don't they take me into equity 5.5 years and put a continued regime of interlocutory injunctions on me that can go on forever? I mean, an interlocutory injunction that goes on forever, what's that? Well, that's a final injunction without being heard. Why won't they let me be heard? You know, why when I take out 2 private prosecutions against caseworkers, do they just pull them out of the judicial system and shut them down? You know, why do they never allow me a voice to be heard? That's all I've ever asked. You know, and they just fight me continuously and just do everything they can to destroy me. You know, and I'm over it. I've had enough. So
we need more people standing up.
Yeah,
I think.
So I'm going to do my best to complete this task righteously. I'm going to run my argument. I'm going to be honest about it. I'm going to be forthright. I'm over suppression. I'm over being persecuted for speaking the truth and protecting children. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to continue to protect children. I'm going to continue to speak the truth, but I'm not going to allow this persecution to continue. We, as a community, have taken it into our own hands to protect our children. That's what we're going to do. So that department ain't coming near us. And that's my advice to anyone else in this country. If you've got children, don't let this department into your home. Because if you do, if they're building a case to remove your children, you'll never get them back. Your chance of getting back are like as close to zero as they get. There's no money in restoring your children back to you. You know, none. So, you know.
Well, in that case, I guess we should wrap it up there because I know that you've got a lot to prepare. It's only a couple of days away. There are a lot of people behind you, Paul, and supporting you. And I am just really honoured to have met you. And thank you for coming on again and sharing and giving us
Julia.
updates.
Thank you for yourself. You made an effort to come all the way to Brisbane. That's great. There was people that came a long distance there, and I'm very appreciative. Those people made a huge difference. And don't devalue yourself. So, I mean, I can't do anything without people. Like I'm just one person. I'm no different to you. I'm a bit older and been, through the Church of Hard Knocks, one of a better word. But learned a few skills along the way. But essentially, we're all the same. We're all part of God's creation. We're all here. We all have a role to play in this, and it's imperative that every single person is important. And I think the more people that stand, and the more people that just do something. And what can I do to help? Something. Just do something. Do a live cast like you if you can work it out. Go to an event. Go and look in a children's court. Just go down there and have a look and walk in. And just face your own fear and go in there. There's no law that says you can't go and stand outside the court in the children's court. There's no law that says you can't go into the courtroom. They can ask you to leave. But people have got to get over this nanny state bullshit of living in fear.
And can I just also say, the moment I actually started looking into this, It's just been an explosion of information as
Mm.
well as stories, personal stories. Like, you don't have to be a journalist or reporter to look into things. Just out of your own curiosity and wanting to try and make a difference. There's
Mm.
just so much. Only if you just got to start looking into it,
Mm.
and it's
Mm.
all there. But yeah, a lot of the time it's just showing up, like you said, and
Mm.
through like
See
being,
it for yourself.
yeah,
You know, this is what people don't believe something just because it's told to you. Don't believe something just because it's been in history. Don't believe something. I think something Gautama Buddha even said, you know, don't just believe this stuff because it's come at you for all different reasons. Recognize it yourself from your own living experience. Go
yeah.
and look. If you don't believe me, go and look.
Mm.
Go into a children's court, go down there, go and just sit at those courts and watch those families come in and watch what's going on. Just go yourself, go in there and learn what I've learned and watch it. And when they ask you to leave, go like, well, why? I thought it was an open justice system. They're not going to, what are they going to do? Yeah, okay, leave if they tell you to leave, but go and see what's going on here.
Mm.
That's all people have to do, rather than just carrying on in their lives thinking, oh, this is all great. But most of these children's courts, or they've got different names in different territories, but they're just round the corner from some of these people, even people sitting there looking now. This is what's going on.
Yeah.
We're a world leader. We remove more children per capita than anywhere else in the world. We have the highest incidence of sexual abuse of female children in this country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Indigenous have been absolutely decimated for 230 years. You know, everyone talks about, you know, oh, you know, I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past and present, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh, please, you know, like that's lip service.
Yeah.
Stop ripping their kids.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to hear any more speeches from politicians. I want action. You know, the black fellas have had enough. Stop taking their kids. You know? And also the other low socioeconomic groups too that they're targeting, and others, you know, the Filipinos and the Macedonians and all the others that they're targeting. Stop it. Stop taking the children without any right or justification. Let's fix this thing, you know, and let's start protecting our children now. We don't have to allow the government to do this. If we stand, they're not going to do it. They won't. Not coming near our kids, you know, so people need to stand, and righteously.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Nah, never be sorry for that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll see you on Monday morning.
Beautiful. You've got the details. I'll be
I
very
do.
distracted. I've got a whole bunch of paperwork
That's all right.
on the pool table here, just piled out. I'm nearly done. I've just got a couple
Yep.
of things to finish up, but I'm on it. We're going down. We've got a little place to rent in Sydney because this matters, because it's a special fixture, which means if it goes for more than 5 days, it has to continue. It won't continue over the weekend, but it'll go the following Monday and continue if it's not done in 5 days.
Yep.
I believe I can do what needs to be done in 5 days,
Yep.
unless it blows out for some reason.
And can we support you financially as well if people want to?
There's a donation tab on my website if people want to contribute. I mean, that's lovely. I think I said to you before, I don't spruik the financial things. I've seen a lot of other people doing it. I'm not entirely comfortable. It's called Dana, which is people contribute if you're moved by my actions and what I do. So if you see my work and you believe in what I'm doing and you trust me and you know what I'm doing, then please, donate and contribute. I accept as alms, you know, ALMS, alms, or Dana in the Hindu end of things. But yes, please, you can help, because Karen and I put the money together ourselves to rent an Airbnb for a week because we got a whole bunch of people and it was so much cheaper. But that was a lot of money. It was like $2,500 to get the cheapest place we could. But we needed to get a lot of people having a calm, and if they all rented separately, it was going to cost a fortune. So and we're driving down tomorrow. So if people want to contribute, they can. But I said that's one thing I can assure you, and you'll see that if you do come and watch me in operation, that this is not about money. This is about our children.
100%.
Money's the last thing I'm thinking about. God gives me enough. He gives me enough to get me over the line. I've always got enough to do what I need to do. Sometimes only just, but always enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's leave it there. And I'll look forward to seeing you Monday. And thank you everyone for tuning in as well. Please show your support. Share this video out there. Jump on Paul's website. Subscribe to his email list to get the updates. Not just for his case, but Operation Noetics as well, and many other things that he's involved in. So, all right, Paul, let's leave it there.
Thank you, Julia.
No
God
worries.
bless. See you on Monday. Thank you.
See you Monday. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.